So I once had this kid in my class named Dave who never said a single word for the first month of the school year. And I mean not a single word. And he was hardly doing any work, and I couldn't even get him to say his name to me. He would just kind of keep his head down, and I was just out of answers because usually I'm pretty good at getting high school boys to talk a little bit. I could at least make them laugh, but with Dave it was nothing. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna call home and see if his parents have any tips on how I could maybe get him to open up a bit. And so I called home, and a woman answered, and I said, hi, is this Dave's mom? And she goes, well, no, I'm not his mom. I'm Dave's foster mom. I said, oh, okay. Didn't know that. So I said, hi, I'm Mr. Muir, and I'm just having trouble getting Dave to say anything in class, and I was hoping maybe you could help me out a little bit. And she goes, oh, Mr. Muir, I've actually been meaning to call you. We haven't been able to get Dave to really say anything at home since he's been living with us. I was hoping maybe you could help me out. I was like, sorry, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that yet. And she goes, well, while I have you on, I should tell you that Dave holds the record for being in the most foster homes in the shortest amount of time at this foster care agency. And she told me about some of Dave's history and what the social worker told her about, some of the stuff Dave has been through. And it was awful. I mean, it was just terrible. And as I was about to hang up, she said, oh, Mr. Muir, I should also tell you that I've been told that Dave has some serious issues with men because of what happened to him. And I thought I should just let you know that. And man, when she told me this, I hung up the phone, and I was just feeling so hopeless. Like my heart was broken. I remember just weeping at my desk, weeping for Dave and everything that he'd been through up into this point of his life, weeping for the simple fact that I still have to teach him how to use semicolons properly in sentences. I've got to teach him how to write an expository essay this year. I've got to teach him all these things for my class, knowing that he's been through absolute hell already up to this stage of life. Like, how am I supposed to do that? How are educators supposed to tap into students' lives knowing that there is a lot more happening beneath the surface? With a kid like Dave and so many others, his story has just been ripe with conflict, with struggle, with trauma. And yet my responsibility, your responsibility, is still to find ways to creatively connect with them. And there's... Sometimes it just feels hopeless. Sometimes it feels too much, like it's just too hard, like there's no way that we can effectively do this work with all of the brokenness in the world, with all of the heartbreak and trauma. And I can tell you with Dave specifically, it took a while. It did. Those first few months of the school year, there was just very little productivity. There was very few words out of his mouth. There wasn't a whole lot of progress. And then there was days where I was like, yeah, this is hopeless. Like the idea of getting this kid who has been through so much to actually do well in class is not something that I'm capable of doing. But I do remember that spring of that year. I mean, we got Dave to loosen up a little bit, but during that spring, I was walking by his desk one day, and I saw he had his laptop open, and on his Chromebook was playing Star Wars. And as soon as Dave saw me kind of walking behind him, he slammed it shut, and I was like, hey, I saw you were watching a movie. And he goes, oh, sorry. I was like, oh, he does speak. I was like, it's okay. What was that, Star Wars? And he goes, I said, well, Dave, I love Star Wars. Like, it's one of my favorite movie series. Do you love it too? And he goes, no. I was like, well, then why are you watching it in my class? And he was like, and I said, so why were you watching it then? He goes, well, I'm trying to learn some filmmaking techniques. I want to be a filmmaker someday. I said, you do? I was like, and finally I'm getting him to talk a little bit, and he kind of lights up for just a moment. He's like, yeah, I love movies and I want to make movies someday. And so I'm just trying to get ideas. I was like, oh, I love that, Dave. And then he kind of went back to his quiet mode, almost as if I caught him off guard, like caught him kind of opening up a little too much. And so he went back, and I was kind of just, my mind was spinning a little bit, like, what do I do with this? And so as I was planning out my World War II unit coming up, I was like, you know what? I was going to have my students go and interview and talk to World War II veterans and have them write their stories down. What if I have a video component to it? Because kids have these smartphones, and we can go and video the veterans. And so that day in class, or that next day in class, I told students, hey, we're going to go and talk to World War II vets. And I want some of you to bring cameras from home or phones. We're going to use whatever we have, and we're going to film these veterans, and we're going to make little movies about them. And I remember as soon as those words left my mouth, Dave's eyes lit up because he knew he was actually going to get to do this thing that he wants to do. And all of his brokenness and hardship and difficult years, clearly movies became a very important part of his life. It became an important part of his coping. And so now he was going to get an opportunity to do it in my class. And so for the next month, they interviewed World War II vets. He created these films. We had this big event where they showcased it for the community. And it was like this catalyst moment for Dave. All of a sudden, this kid who was not interested in being in school and not interested in being in my class and not interested in talking was all of a sudden opening up because this passion that he had was incorporated into class. And I can tell you his life didn't necessarily get easier and easier. There was still so much in his past that was still with him, but there was something about this experience that started opening him up to what we were doing in class, opening him up in his relationship with me, his teacher. And he didn't just revert back to where it was. There was this new kid showing up. It changed his posture in the classroom. Now, does it always go this way? No, of course not. Like sometimes we just have to plant the seeds and water them, and that's it. But then sometimes you get these moments that affirm that it's worth continuing on. It's worth continuing to invest in kids and find creative ways to try to tap into what they're interested in. And I just realized in that moment that, yeah, it's always worth it, and it doesn't always pay off. And I have no idea where Dave is today. I really don't. But I don't regret a moment of that project. I don't regret all of the effort and time I put in to working with that kid, because I get to see glimmers of what he's capable of. And my hope is that investment I made and other teachers made at that time did something in Dave that is paying off years later. And that's all we can hope for. So anyway, if you have students, which I'm sure you do, who have more beneath the surface, who only bring a certain side of themselves to school, but you know there's more going on, just know that every bit of effort and time you put into connecting with them and hopefully motivating them to work, but also enjoy being in your classroom learning, if that's you, keep doing it, because it's very, very important work.